It's John Pollock, and this is Fight News Now Extra. Today we are going to run through all of the action from the past weekend with John Ramdeen and Robin Black joining me as we discuss World Series of Fighting featuring 3 title bouts. Glory presented their first pay-per-view event with an 8-man middleweight tournament, and a UFC fighter gets popped in their post-fight drug test. World Series of Fighting 10 took place from Las Vegas on Saturday night, featuring 3 title fights on the main card. Main card action saw Team Alpha Male wrestling coach Lance Palmer submit Nick Labosco. Luis Firmino got a unanimous decision over Tyson Griffin, and then heading into the championship triple header, it featured Jessica Aguilar defeating Emi Fujino by unanimous decision, retaining her strawweight title and winning each round on her way. Rick Glenn became the new World Series of Fighting featherweight champion after Georgi Karakanyan, who was nearly able to stop Glenn with an armbar, couldn't continue after round number 2. And the main event featured David Branch escaping a guillotine to apply a Darce choke and submit Jesse Taylor to become the promotion's first middleweight champion. Glory presented their last man standing pay-per-view from Inglewood, California on Saturday night. The card saw Rico Verhoeven successfully defend his heavyweight title in a rematch with Daniel Guita as he took the unanimous nod. Artem Levin avenged his loss to Joe Schilling in the finals of the one-night 8-man middleweight tournament and wins the championship after going through Schilling, Philip Berlinden, and Alex Pereira in the tournament. Over on the welterweight side, Canadian Joseph Valtellini is the new champion, unseating Mark Debont with a unanimous decision victory. And the Spike TV portion that led into the pay-per-view was headlined by Mirko Cro Cop edging past Jarrell Miller when they went to the judges. And UFC flyweight Luis Gaudino has been suspended by the organization for 6 months after it was discovered that he failed his post-fight drug test after the March 8th card in England where he defeated Phil Harris. Gaudino tested positive for a diuretic by the company, and Harris was the one who notified people online that his loss has been changed to a no contest. Hello folks, John Pollock alongside John Ramdeen and Robin Black. We don't really have much UFC to discuss today, but that doesn't mean there's any less combat sports action that went down over the past weekend and some interesting fights coming out of the weekend. Let's first start off with the Glory pay-per-view event, the pre-show, airing here on Fight Network Live, which was headlined by Mirko Cro Cop getting past Jarrell Miller. A very close fight. A lot of people were debating it back and forth. Certainly not some unjustified decision here. It was a close fight, and Mirko Cro Cop won.
Yeah, that's what it comes down to. People thought, wow, the punches of Miller were more powerful than any of the strikes landed by Mirko Cro Cop. But the reality is, it was a very, very close fight. I had it for Mirko Cro Cop, but what do I know?
Yeah, and how do they know that?
Yeah,
Ask Miller how hard Mirko's punches were. You know what I mean? People are odd that way. They'll be like, well, those leg kicks didn't do any damage. Ask the fighter on Monday when he can't walk and his buddy's wheeling him around with like an IV drip of a beer. Like, it's like, these guys, they get beat up no matter what. And they don't all look like, you know, head smashers with sweat flying in slow motion. Sometimes the little ones hurt too.
Yeah, and a fantastic featherweight tournament. We also saw in the undercard 2 tournaments on Saturday with the middleweight tournament featuring Artem Levin, who me and Robin had the pleasure to call some of his fights in Russia, avenging that loss over Joe Schilling and now the middleweight champion. What did you guys think of just the overall presentation of Glory? Because this was a really big step forward for them moving on to a pay-per-view platform.
I got a question for you guys. What do you think if we put the first round of that tournament on the undercard so people got excited about buying the pay-per-view? Don't you think that
I think it makes sense. I think there's a lot of things that didn't make sense from a pay-per-view standpoint. As we talked about before, Mirko Cro Cop, clearly the biggest name for casual fans
on the entire
card. So why he wasn't a part of the pay-per-view really didn't make sense. Then you could have the first round of the middleweight tournament to get the finals in the pay-per-view as well. And then
that to me is an organization and a television company coming together, and they want this and you want this, and it becomes very hard when your buddy heads there, and the compromise is, well, Mirko Cro Cop is going to lead into the pay-per-view.
And if we do that and we go, okay, so people are going to watch our live television thing, we have a partnership with Spike, and they want that, then use that to sell the pay-per-view. I know they did some you know, little marketing and pieces and stuff, but if you put that first round of the tournament on, you go, and now buy the pay-per-view and see the rest of it. You've used Mirko to hook him on the tournament. Now you want to see how Artem Levin does as he goes forward.
If that didn't hook them, I thought you put Joe Valtellini versus Mark Debont as your main event for the welterweight title. All you have to do is watch both of those guys fight. Just a fan-friendly style, and there was no surprises with the way the fight turned out. It was very action-packed, and I'm sure it would have gotten people very excited to buy the pay-per-view.
And Joseph Valtellini, when we talk about Glory, it's usually their biggest indictment is just their lack of stars. But you look at him, and certainly the building blocks from just an action standpoint, the guy looks like a movie star. I mean, this guy is someone that I think Glory is just, you could really pitch your tent to here.
For sure. And from a performance standpoint, you got guys like Varga coming up. You've got these action fighters. I mean, one thing, maybe the star is the sport too. It's great.
It is.
And it's great that we find guys who are able to transcend it a bit. We care how they perform and stuff. But man, you just got to watch a couple of these fights. If you're a fight fan, it's also really exciting. You see Matamoros showing jiu-jitsu. You see Glory showing. MMA is the greatest sport in the world. But when you see the building blocks of them getting exciting and building an audience, that's good stuff.
And I like the fact that because, you know, Glory is modified kickboxing, modified Thai boxing. It's not the same as traditional Thai boxing. And we saw when guys kind of come out of their comfort zone, like Simon Marcus, a guy that's been heralded for years as one of the best Thai fighters outside of Thailand. He goes into this new platform, and he's trying to deal with the fact that you can't clinch. You're not allowed to use elbows. And Joe Schilling came after this guy and knocked him unconscious, gave the fans what they were looking for. And what's amazing is that Andy Risti kind of got buried on the undercard. You got the heavyweight title fight
Fantastic knockout.
Exactly. You have Rico Verhoeven and Daniel Guida on the card, Mirko Krokop on the card, the middleweight tournament, the featherweight tournament, the welterweight title, and then Andy Risti comes out and obliterates Kai Hollenbeck. This is, I think, you look at Andy Risti, this is the guy that could be the guy for Glory at that weight class. You know, taking out Robin van Roosmalen and Giorgio Petrosian in the past. How would he look? Didn't look that well. He looked good against David Kiria, but got himself knocked out. How would he respond? Well, he responded with an A++.
Yeah. It seemed that over the weekend, kind of World Series of Fighting, people knew it was going on, but it wasn't a primary focus of the weekend. And I think that has to do with the fact that they're holding their biggest show ever 2 weeks from now. Yeah. And I think that honestly, there is some burnout amongst fight fans who it's just, this was one weekend free of UFC, and were they going to spend their Saturday night watching Glory, watching World Series of Fighting? And I think World Series, they presented a show where, again, names that are known to the hardcore base, but not past that. And 3 title fights, it wasn't as enticing for people.
Yeah, it's true. You got to watch Rick Glenn, man. This guy is a world-class featherweight for sure. But in general, yeah, I think they're having a tough time. We love calling World Series of Fighting Canada. We believe in that organization. You want to see it do well, but man, it's a crowded space.
Dave Branch with the Bravo choke. Good job.
A fantastic submission. And Jessica Aguilar retaining her championship as well on Saturday night. That's all for us, but we have more coming up with Fight News Now Extra.